and welcome to the first in a series of videos which will introduce you to the basics of Python. In this video we're just going to have a look at how to get started in Python, and in our following videos we're going to be looking at how to do things like turtle graphics and incorporate more programming techniques using Python. But to begin with, let's have a look at how to begin. So you're going to be using a program called Mu to use Python in, and Mu is something called an IDE, Interactive Development Environment, and all that means is it's a program that allows you to run code, type code, edit code and fix mistakes and things like that. So basically it's your interface for using Python. Now when it first starts up, you're going to see a screen like this, and we're going to be using Python 3. You can use different IDEs as long as you're learning Python in any version greater than 3, then you're fine. So I'm going to click OK to get started, and here is my interface in Mu, and you can see there's not much there. There's a prompt telling us that that's where we're going to write our code. At the top I can change my theme if I want to, so I can toggle between dark and a light theme. I can zoom in and out if I want to see my code more clearly. I can save my code, and you need to save your program before you run each one, and then when we've written a program we want to run it to see what happens. So we're not going to worry too much about some of the other buttons at the top for the moment. So let's try writing our very first program. So Python is what we call a text-based programming language. It's not like Scratch, which you can use by dragging blocks and connecting things visually. You type your commands in Python. So it's very important to follow the rules, because Python, like any language, has rules you have to follow. Just like in English there are rules about grammar, and in Python there are rules about what words you can and can't use and how you have to write things down. It's called syntax. So let's have a little example of a very simple program to test and run. So my first command, I'm going to use print, and print, you'll notice straight away it changes the colour because it recognises that word. So it's a reserved word in Python, it knows what print means. And then I'm going to put brackets, some speech marks, and then I'm going to type in hello world, which is traditionally the first program that everybody ever writes. And then I'm going to put my speech marks and close my brackets at the end of it, and then press enter, and nothing happens. That's because if we want to actually run our program we have to save it first. So I'm just going to call this save, and I'm going to call it hello world. And now I can run it, and you can see that underneath it's done what I asked it to do. Now that's all really straightforward, but what you're going to find one of your biggest frustrations or biggest learning curves is actually the kind of syntax you can and can't use. So for instance, let's see what happens if we try a capital P, which to you or I would make perfect sense. We'd look at that and we would understand that that still meant print. But if I now change that to a capital P and run it again, it comes up with an error, and it tells us the name print is not defined. So that tells us something. It tells us that Python doesn't understand what print means unless we change it to a lowercase, which might seem silly, but that's the way text-based programming languages work. You have to follow their rules. Let's see if there's any other bits of syntax that we might need to remember. So what happens if I was to take out the brackets? So surely that doesn't change what it's going to do. So let's run that, and then that tells us invalid syntax. So again, it doesn't like the way that we've written that program. Okay, so what if I just did the brackets and got rid of the speech marks? So stop the program, save it and run again, and again this time it thinks it's a command that we're trying to use, and of course it isn't. So I've learned that I have to type things in like this. That's what my print statement needs to look like if I want it to work. So I'll correct it back again, and this time it's fine. You can, if you want to, do some little tweaks and changes to the syntax that you use. So look, this time I've used an apostrophe instead of a speech mark. Let's see if it's happy with that, and it is. It will cope with that. So in my first experimentation with Python, I've learned that I can type commands in, I can use print to help me display things on the screen. I need to save my program before I run it so I can see what happens, and if I don't use the correct syntax, so let's try again, my program will not do what I want it to do. There we are. A little clue again. Notice how both print statements are that blue colour, which says Python telling us that it knows what they mean, and the capital P, it doesn't. It makes that look, keeps that black, which tells us that it doesn't recognise it as a word. So if you're comfortable at opening Mu, creating a simple program to print some things on the screen, saving and running that program and getting it to work, you're going to be fine. And you can move on to the second tutorial, which is going to introduce us to the idea of using Turtle graphics